This is like starting with the Super Bowl. It doesn't get any bigger or better.
This global all-star race is loaded with iconic drivers and teams.
Felipe Nasr wins the Rolex 24 at Daytona, and the captain continues his global domination.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast. I'm Matt Yocum. The 63rd Rolex 24 is in the books, and it was simply everything everyone had hoped for. An amazing race. The crowd was epic, and the viewership numbers were through the roof. 2 million plus on our IMSA YouTube channel. Coming up today, Team Penske President Tim Cindric will be joined by the GOAT of IMSA Weather Tech Racing, Scott Pruett, and we'll find out some of the latest from the Media Center as we catch up with our IMSA Paddock Insider, Graham Goodwin. That and so much more. So let's just jump right in, everybody. And joining us now is Team President from Team Penske, and that is Tim Cindric. And when you look back to the Rolex 24, Tim, it took 55 years from the first Rolex win to the second for Roger Penske. Boy, back-to-back wins and incredible stories coming out of Daytona.
Yeah, Matt, appreciate you having me. And yeah, like you said, it's kind of surreal to know that we've gone back-to-back after really taking so long to get back in victory lane last year to come here and really have a phenomenal race across the board with both cars. So yeah, certainly fortunate to get through the weekend the way we did, and happy with the result, obviously.
Now you're a dad with a pair of kids, so you understand the whole team car concept that there's never any favorites. It's always neutrality. What are you most proud of with the boys on both the 6 and the 7 with the 1-3 finish at Daytona?
I think it really comes down to the execution across the board. When you look at that race, we said it in our strategy meeting before the race that we may not have the fastest car at the end of the day from a lap time perspective or from a straight line perspective, but felt like we controlled our destiny as long as we didn't make mistakes. And, our team was, obviously we had a very reliable car, and the cars, both of them, ran like a top. There was really nothing that, mechanically or electrically was flawed throughout the race. And the pit stops throughout the night, throughout the day, and the driver execution, it was exactly as, if you look at it on paper and you say, hey, how did you want to execute today? I think on all fronts it's what put us in victory lane.
When you talk about the drama meter, it really got pegged at one point late in the going when the 6 and the 7 side by side battling and then going down the backstretch. Nasr made an unbelievable gutsy move down to the inside below the yellow line to take the lead. What was the mood like and the eyeball looks on top of the pit box when that took place?
Well, you don't want to see either one of them lose. If there's a way that they can both win, that's what you want. And the two of them, I'd worked with them last year. Obviously, they were teammates last year, and they get along so well together. And you see them fighting not only for themselves, and that's what makes it a little bit different, obviously, in endurance racing, is that you're driving for your co-drivers as well, and you're trying to get them a watch, and you're trying to put them in victory lane, and knowing that one is going to end up with a watch and one isn't. It's really hard to watch. When you see that kind of battle, and then the consequences of getting it wrong are that none of the team ends up in victory lane, and what you watch the 60 car celebrate when you did all the work to get there. So. Yeah, a lot of mixed feelings, from the camp at that point in time, and it's certainly a relief after it's all over.
We talked at the Brickyard last fall, and then again at the season finale at Petit Le Mans, just about the team orders, so to speak, in that you said simply, it's just don't wreck each other, race smart. So there weren't team orders, so to speak, of, okay, if this guy is out front, he's going to win, like we see so often, in road racing, and it gave a whole nother level of excitement for the fan to have that type of mindset.
Well, obviously with the way the pits are there, and the fact that we had to stack our two cars, on the last pit stop there, we took two different strategies. With the 6 car being in front, we took 2 tires there, and we took 4 tires with the other cars so that we wouldn't lose a lot of time in the pit lane. And our original intention was to stay in line there and not race each other too hard and make sure we can get away from the 60. The unfortunate thing was we were never really able to get away from the 60. And, Tom did a great job of putting the pressure on, and the 4 tires, prevailed from an endurance standpoint. And in the end, the 6 car wasn't able to hold on to second with the 2 tires. And it made it really difficult because I think the intention was to get away and to stay in line. And the amount of pressure that Nasser was receiving, from Tom, in the end, he felt like he had to get away or we were both going to lose. And at the end of the day, I think he was right.
Well, for the second year in a row, the sports cars, boys and girls, are the ones that are going to be the first to initiate the traditional Penske toast when you have lunch at the shop for every team member, no matter the department. It's a great venue for everybody to get together and celebrate because the drivers are either there in person or they Zoom in. And for the folks that are listening on the audio portion, if you jump over to the YouTube show, you'll see the special glass that you guys hand out at the beginning of the year. And then for every win, no matter the discipline at Team Penske, there's a little sticker that you put on your glass. And then at the end of the year, you get a special engraved glass, which is really cool to put up on the shelf. So a really cool tradition that's been going on for about 8 years now?
Yeah, I'd have to go back. It was definitely pre-COVID, so I can't remember if it was after the 500 wins, when we had that process when we started the Hall of Fame. So I think it's somewhere in the 7 or 8 years, but I'd have to look back to remember exactly what that stat is. But no, it's great. RP will actually be here tomorrow, so it's a great way to kick off the start of the season, when we're running sports cars with the Daytona 24, and internally it's a really good internal competition that's really healthy. You want to continue to, each discipline, each series continues to want to do their part to kind of uphold the legacy. And when the sports car team starts off by winning the 24 hours, and obviously it gets handed over to the NASCAR group to say, can we go do the Daytona 500, and then obviously the IndyCar season starts there in St. Pete. So it gets rolling here really quick, and it's great to get off the season on the right foot anyway.
We talked at Daytona last year just with the formation of the Porsche Penske partnership on this program, and so often you'll see manufacturers and teams, they just don't gel. The mindset just doesn't align, but it seems like almost from the get-go the American side and the German side really came together. And how did that come together and mesh so quickly?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much still carries over from the RS Spider days. Some of the key components, when you look at, Thomas Laudenbach, who runs Porsche Motorsport worldwide, he was a key component to the RS Spider program, and he was in charge of the drivetrain at that point in time. So I think there's obviously a trust at the highest level, with Roger and the extent in which Penske Corporation is involved with the dealerships and the Porsche brand, to really having the confidence in our team that we can deliver on the racetrack, for Porsche, and it's a unique legacy that I think we're all proud to be part of. And I think back to some of Roger and I's first conversations back in 1999 when I started with the team about, hey, what do we want to try and accomplish together? And the one thing that I said to him at that time was, I'd love to be part of the Porsche Penske legacy at some point. And there were a lot of, at that time, there were a lot of different discussions about sports car programs because we hadn't been involved in quite some time. And I said, look, I hear the Porsche's looking to build a prototype again, and can we wait until they do that? And that's when the Spider program came about, and to see it go full circle and really have an opportunity to go win Le Mans with Porsche. And I think that's the ultimate. That's why this program exists. It's why Porsche races in endurance racing, and they obviously understand the importance of winning in IMSA and winning at Daytona. But I think everybody would agree that the biggest endurance race in the world is Le Mans. And so we look forward to going there and having a chance to compete again this year.
And really the way you set the table with the mindset about how the most important piece of the puzzle is the manufacturer's championship, then the team championship, and then the driver's championship. And it seems like everybody buys in, so it makes that road as far as two teams working together and the overall group working together simply almost like magic, just the way that they gel and everything else.
Well, the global approach, not only on the team side and the way that we looked at it with Porsche when we put this program together, but also how important it is for IMSA and the WEC to continue to stay connected on the rules package, because that's what makes it work. We're racing the same car worldwide. Okay, there's a couple nuances that are different, but they're really offsets in our mind. We're able to take drivers and move drivers across the series, as you saw with Lawrence and what you saw with Estre this weekend, and continue to move the needle relative to cooperation and having drivers that can drive in both series and mechanics that everything contributes, the engineering, all the rest of it. It really makes it work, and the fact that we're one organization, in Porsche Penske Motorsport. And okay, we have two locations, but it's very transparent and really has a great continuity. And I think we're starting to see the strength of that. Obviously, the first year in any program is challenging, and we had our own challenges, from a reliability standpoint, but also from a team execution standpoint in some areas. And we missed some opportunities, but I think what's great is both groups are so driven to succeed and have so much to live up to that we got it all right last year for the most part, and we were able to win the dual championships and Daytona, and really knock on the door there at Le Mans. Hopefully that all comes together this year.
Stellar season indeed. When you look at your vision, Mr. Penske's vision, of where you guys just have such an ability to look, the forest through the trees type of scenario, and you shuffle the lineup on the 7 for this season, putting Nick Tandy with Felipe. How do they get the best out of each other?
Well, I think number one, they have to believe in each other. But in all sports car racing, the most successful groups are the ones that really understand each other's strengths and weaknesses and put their ego aside and understand what tracks are best for them, what tracks are best for their teammate, and aren't too proud to say, hey, he's better than me today, and he should be in this situation versus myself. And I think that's really the key to success, especially from a driver perspective, is having two drivers that complement each other in terms of their strengths and weaknesses, but are also able to admit maybe when it's not their day. And I think the drivers that we have this year, I guess when I look at the 6 drivers that we had there at Daytona, I didn't see a weakness in any of them. And when it came down to, hey, who's going to finish the race, it was really a matter of drive time and a matter of, looking at each one and talking about the various scenarios and doing what was best for the team at the time. And obviously Felipe had closed it out the year before. He'd been in that position and, kind of been there, done that, and had nothing to lose. And obviously he turned out to be the right choice.
So you take your team president hat off, you put your dad hat on, and we've talked so many times about just how impressive that I think your son Austin is over how he prepares for a race, both doing his homework, the mental side of it. It's just, this kid is like a machine, and he doesn't want to let anybody down. And I remember the conversation we had once that, you told Roush Fenway, the kid carries the entire team on his shoulders because he wants everyone to do so well. Looking at his preparation, when he got the call New Year's Day to be a part of the Ford Multimatic Mustang team, and he was over at the sim, logging a lot of hours there, and then all the other homework with the team. So as a dad, what impresses you most about Austin and his racecraft?
Well, I think, he his work ethic, I think, is really his strength. And I feel like from a team perspective, he's been fortunate to grow up around a lot of the best. And, that comes with some baggage as well. Right. He's got to be able to see through the critics relative to, how he got to where he is and all the rest of it. And I've always told him look, you got to look at it for yourself, and you have to look at things and say, look, don't ever apologize for an opportunity. Make sure you make the most of it. And the only time you really need to apologize is if you don't make the most of it. But I think a lot of people don't realize how important it is within our environment that it's all about results. And if you don't get the results, there's no handouts, in Roger Penske's worlds. I think I've always told him you've got to earn your stripes, and I think he's always had the work ethic to at least put his best foot forward and look at it from an overall perspective. And growing up around a guy like Elio Castroneves and some of the other drivers that he's known really since he was 1 or 2 years old, he's had a lot of really good examples to follow. And this is all he cares about, and it's what he wants to try and succeed at and what he wants to try and do. And I just try and stay out of the way.
Well, certainly an incredible kid who has grown into, such an incredible young man, just away from the race car, not even looking at, his racing abilities. So when you were 16 and your father, Carl, legendary engine builder on the IndyCar side, what was your first car that you ever had when you got your license when you were 16? And did you have to talk to your dad into getting it? How did that all come about?
It was a 1971 Eldorado Cadillac that I hated. It showed up one day, and it was a hand-me-down from Herb Porter, one of his mentor at the end of the day, that had handed it down to somebody else, and showed up in the driveway, and like, what's that? And we didn't really come from much. I didn't have money to buy a car or whatever else, and he said, well, you can either drive it or you can ride your bike. And I drove that thing for about a year and was trying to figure out how to work to get something else, because I was working nights and weekends in his engine shop, sweeping the floors, taking apart engines, cleaning engines, whatever it took. And I found the only way out of that car into a different car was I had a baseball card collection, and I had a few decent baseball cards in this collection, so I took it to the state fair. I said, what do you give me for this stuff? And I got enough money for my baseball cards for a down payment on a 79 Trans Am. And that's what I drove through the rest of high school and college. It was nocturne blue, so dark blue with a white interior. It was basically what I had until I got out of school.
Wow. Awesome piece to certainly look back on it as your first real car after the Caddy, which is funny because Joseph Newgarden, his first car also Cadillac Eldorado, with a number of miles on it and a few years on it as well.
Hey, when it snowed, it had front wheel drive. It had a 501 in it. Everybody wanted to ride in it when the snow was big because it could go through any snow drift. With really 6 people my size with the bench seats in it, could go from A to B. But when it came to style, it wasn't where you wanted to be.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, Tim, thank you for taking time out of your massive busy schedule to stop by and talk to us about what a wonderful and epic weekend in Daytona, winning the 63rd Rolex 24.
I appreciate you having me. Appreciate your passion for the sport. And hopefully we can keep going.
All right. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thank you.
So if you're playing Trivial Pursuit with your friends and an IMSA Weather Tech question comes up, just yell out Scott Pruett, because chances are the GOAT will be the correct answer for whatever that question is. And it's our honor to have the series all-time winner joining us now from Northern California. So Scott, I saw all your social media from the grid walk and being down the champion, down with all the fans, but where are you today?
Actually, I am sitting in my winery here in Northern California, Pruett Vineyard. It is that time of year. We were at the Rolex 24 last week, an incredible race. Congratulations to Roger, Penske, the whole Porsche team. Another, back-to-back wins is pretty cool at the Rolex 24. And then jumping right back into the winery. A lot of stuff to do this time of year. You see all the barrels in the background. We're just starting our blending of our 2023 vintage. Looking forward to bottling in July. So many different hats going on, and I'm loving every minute of it.
So speaking of hats and blending, automatically I just conjure up images of Jack Roush back at your days with him in the 80s, doing some kind of blending of a concoction, getting more horsepower out of those super throaty V8 Fords.
Yes, we did. And funny thing, I was in race control over the weekend with the IMSA and had this thought to call Jack. And I called Jack and had the opportunity to visit with him a little bit from race control, Mark Raffoff, myself. Definitely gonna go see him here very shortly. But the memories that we have, and all the races, and all the victories, and getting a hold of Bruce Jenner, now Caitlyn Jenner, different story. Talked to him last week, and making sure we're first and foremost making sure she was okay with all the crazy fires going on, but also reliving some of those memories. Going to Daytona with Jack for the first time, we ended up finishing. We should have won, but we ended up finishing second, and then go back to win. About a month later at Sebring, in a pretty controversial victory, taking the lead on the last turn of the last lap from Ricky Rudd, and then the fight that almost had begun between Bruce and him. It was it was some crazy stories.
I was talking to one of your old Ford teammates, Wally Dallenbach Jr., the week leading up to the Rolex, and said, "Hey, look, the 85 winner chassis 013 is going to be on display." And he's like, I wish I had that car. That was such a killer car, just incredible horsepower, down the straights. And at that time, you didn't have the bus stop to slow down the speeds going into 3. And that was when you would just go hauling the mail off into turn 3. What was it like driving one of those Mustangs that Jack prepared?
It was, in those days, you had the option of different size capacity engines, and going to Daytona, you're going for the max cubic inch. And Jack, being Jack, he wanted to have that perfect combination for whatever that track demanded. And so we actually ran close to the same top speeds as a prototype. So we're actually quicker in those days, probably about 230 going into turn 1. And it was amazing. I mean, when we look back and you think about the cars in that era, you turn the headlights on and maybe you see 50 feet in front of you. You had H pattern type transmissions, certainly no paddle shift, no traction control, no ABS, no driver age whatsoever. You had 2 analog gauges in front of you, big ones, and then all the small ones. So you had to keep track of everything as a driver. And from a driving standpoint, Hurley and I and Mario were talking about that. When you look at that era gone by, and everything was demanded on the driver, and there was so much to keep track of. You had to be real careful on braking not to lock something up. You had to be real careful on every upshift and downshift not to miss a gear. You had to be so careful not to overspin the tires coming up and off the turns when the tires started getting old. You had to continually look at all the gauges all the time and report back to the team to let them know what's going on, because you didn't have telemetry. So it was a lot different in those days. And then when it got nighttime, it was really difficult to see. And you look at the headlight technology, you look at the ABS, you look at the paddle shifters, you look at the telemetry, and drivers, what they have to do now is significantly different than what it was then.
And Wally mentioned one other story, and then we'll move on. He said that they were at Road Atlanta, and in practice, Al Holbert in the 962 came up on him, passed him. Wally passed him back and then started to pull away. And then he pitted. And he says, I'm talking to Jack Roush, giving him a debrief. And all of a sudden, here comes Al Holbert. He is walking directly for us. And he's like, oh my gosh, I think he's mad. And Jack's like, what? And then Al comes up. He goes, what the? is in that car because he passed me and then I couldn't even pass him back. That was just a great example of just how special those cars were in GTO at that time.
They were. And, GTO, which is, be considered the GT3 class now, the horsepower was crazy. I mean, we actually kept it under wraps. The car that we won Daytona, the Mercure, 1988, we won Daytona and a championship. We ended up having about 850 horsepower and about 800 foot-pounds of torque. So they were pretty spectacular. Now, we never told anybody anything. And, it just had to meet the cubic inch. It had to make these rules. But they didn't take the engines away to go dyno them. They didn't look at them. And Jack being Jack, he pushed that envelope to get every little bit of torque, every little bit of horsepower he could out of those big engines.
And also, it's what the rule book didn't say. You had to look at everything to maximize every advantage you could. You talked about being at Daytona and being up in race control. And so often we'll see drivers, when they retire, they'll either transition to some type of role still within the sport, or they'll just back away completely and go into a different chapter of their life. Now, for you, it's kind of a combo platter because you're still at the IMSA Weather Tech races, but yet you mentioned you're wide open with the family vineyard. So what do you do on a race weekend?
Multiple things. Actually, let's just take the Rolex 24 from last weekend. I was there for Rolex. So this is their premier event for the season, the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona. You win a Rolex, it's named after that track, the Daytona. And so I did a bit of work for those guys. Doing some work for Lexus, so I'm still an ambassador for Rolex and Lexus. Doing some work with them, having some dinners, meeting with their guests, talking about the track, talking about the great memories from the place, as well as multiple interviews leading up to the race, talking about how incredible that race is, the challenge of man and machine against the clock and against Mother Nature and whatever conditions she throws at you. And to add on top of that, getting the opportunity to work with IMSA up in race control, and that's been real fulfilling for me. Getting that opportunity to give back. You have all these years of racing and knowledge and experience, and so what IMSA does, and I think it's unique in the way they do it because there's so many cameras and so much data and so many things we can look at. And so we as in the drivers who give opinion, we don't actually make the call. Bose still does that. However, we give influence from a driver's perspective. And it is, it's real interesting. There's some interesting calls, interesting perspectives. And at the end of the day, the driver always gets the benefit of the doubt because as a driver, we're looking at that perspective from sitting behind a wheel, what is taking place, and if it's just a racing incident, fair enough. But if it's something dirty, if it's something that is uncalled for, then immediately they're going to get called for it. And I think it's been a wonderful thing all the way around.
And you mentioned Bo, that's Bo Barfield. And there are a number of different folks up in the tower. I saw David Donahue up there as well back at Petit Le Mans. So it's neat to have somebody with your perspective. Do you sit there sometimes and you're like, oh man, don't do it. Oh, I can't believe he just did that. Just because it takes you back to maybe some earlier times in your career where you had some teething pains going up through the different ladder system. And you see an experience like, oh, that was like 1981, or this might have been 85 of an experience that you had.
Yes, and you can also see things developing. And case in point, there was an interesting circumstance in the GT Pro class last weekend where a multi-lap BMW factory car got in the way of the two leaders, which was a Corvette and the team car of the BMW. And it was unfortunate that the BMW group wanted to use their multiple lap down car as a pick to disrupt the race, which it did. And Bo and I saw this developing multiple laps before. And so we were already talking about what could happen, what might happen, what's the recall on that? What are you going to do? And then as it continued to develop, seeing the unfortunate contact and other circumstance, and then the aggression of what IMSA, driven by Bo, took place of not the ultimate penalty, but if you don't get out of the way now and quit disrupting the outcome of this race, you're going to get parked. So you saw that happening, and you're addressing it before it actually took place, and looking at those options of that's not what we want in IMSA. We want good, hard, clean racing, and everybody up in race control, driven by Rafoff and Bo and the group, and I think it means a lot for the series. It means a lot for the competitors, and at the end of the day, they also know we have a really close eye on them, letting them go out and race hard and do what you need to do, but let's not do anything dirty.
You mentioned that back in your driving days, and you also brought up, I remember Willie T. Ribbs telling me a story about an incident that he had with Caitlyn Jenner, and that there was almost fisticuffs, and it was an interesting post-race in the paddock, so to speak. And when you look back to those days, and then you saw what Tommy Milner did, giving the international signal, and I love the true emotion, because he's being honest, he's not happy. And I love the fact that drivers, and it doesn't matter the era, they're always honest to themselves. Also, though, to their fans, because those fans have been sitting there. If it's a 24-hour race, they've been pulling for Tommy Milner and the Corvette team, and then this happened. So they're living that emotion with him. So if I'm a fan of Tommy, I'm glad that, he's, showing the hello, how you doing signal, because I'm right there with him,
Yes, I probably would have done something a bit more than that myself, and have in the past. Because here's the reality: as a driver, you're out there putting everything on the line. You're taking risks, and you're competing, and the emotions are high, and the adrenaline is high. Everything is just raw, and so when things happen and it goes beyond what we would consider the rules of racing, it's easy to get the driver code. It's difficult to control your feelings because they are so raw and right on the edge, and you feel like things have gone beyond, and it's easy to let your emotions, which have happened to me more than once, get the better of you. But you just, because of that intensity that you approach the race, the intensity that you race the race, the adrenaline and everything that goes with it, sometimes it just goes beyond something that you can control. You look back on, man, I shouldn't have done that. But at that moment, you were just pushed to that ragged edge.
When you look at your racing resume and the race wins, the class wins, the Rolex 24 wins, if there was one race, like a Groundhog Day type moment, that you could just hit the reset button and live it all over again like it was brand new, which one would it be? Is it like saying which one of your kids is the favorite because you've got several, so everybody is your favorite?
Pretty much. When I look back, and I've had, the good Lord blessed me with this incredible 50-year racing career. The achievements, we just because Daytona was last weekend and thinking about all the achievement there, I ended up racing there 24 times. I won it in class 10 times. I won it overall 5 times, and I finished second there 7 times. And taking any of those second places and turn those into a victory would have been very cool. But if there's one race that I wish I could redo, it would be the 95 Indy 500. The car was very fast. We were leading with 18 laps to go. some interesting circumstance took place there at the end. I ended up getting into a little bit of oil from a blown up engine in turn 2, a bump the wall. That was that race for me that got away. And then with the split between kart and IndyCar, I never went back to race the Indy 500 after that. So that one race was one I wish I could have a do-over.
So you mentioned the second places. Now, if you just coulda, woulda, shoulda, one more of those, that would have meant another Rolex watch, which is such a problem to have, because I've seen the great pictures of your Rolex watch collection. And for the folks that are listening on the podcast, jump over to the YouTube show, because we're looking at that amazing collection. But you do a tradition. A, how many do you have? And B, you got a cool tradition to where you let your children select their favorite that they get to keep for them.
Yes. So I have 3 kids, and they each have chosen, when they turn 21, they get the opportunity to choose one of my winning watches, whichever one they want. And how many do I have? It is, so I've won 10 times, so that's 10 watches. And then Rolex sponsored the championship, I think 6 or 7 years. I won the championship 5 of those years, so 5 more championship watches. You got one for doing and being Grand Marshal. So what's that? That's 16. And then Rolex had given me a beautiful watch with my emblem of my 50 years achievement etched into the back of it. And then most recently, I just got another one. One of the last ever Rolex Daytonas made that has the meteorite face, white gold, and I wanted to make it the absolute most special one for me personally. And Rolex was kind enough to put all the 10 victories of the Rolex 24 on the back of that watch. So that one's pretty special. So that's 17. So I have a collection of 17 Rolexes.
What a priceless memory. Now, asking for a friend, do you get free service with your Rolexes because you are Scott Pruett? Or are you like everybody else, you've got to go in and chunk down the credit card?
Rolex takes very good care of me, and I'm just honored to be one of their testimony. I've been involved with that great company for numerous years, and getting that opportunity to work with them at any event, not only on the motorsport side, but now doing some stuff on a non-motorsport side. I was keynote speaker for them at the big boat races in San Francisco Bay last year. Had a great opportunity to share stories of motorsports with stories of sailing. And well, how do those two collide? Well, it's all about precision. It's all about timing. It's all about, coming together as a team and working together as a team. So even though they're 2 totally different worlds, sailboats running about, maybe 20 miles an hour. Obviously, sports cars running 200 miles an hour. But with the precision and with the timing and the teamwork and the focus, those elements are the same. That was fun, and sharing some memories with that group. And when you look at the Rolex 24 hours of Daytona, and you talk to the drivers that have competed in that, they only care about one thing, and that's the watch. Getting that watch in victory lane at the end of that race is something so special. You can wear it, you can enjoy it, you can share it, and then you can pass it on for future generations.
So your 2018 final Rolex 24, when you called it a career, I was standing there with you, interviewing you on the grid. You had the whole family there. So for the first time ever, probably, you didn't have to send a message home, but this wouldn't be a Scott Pruett interview without a little message to your most special people. And it is?
Side of my family at home. It was talk about what started out as something so wonderful and intimate with my kids, because here they are, I'm off racing, 1-year-old, 3-year-old, 7-year-old, especially the young ones, they actually thought I was in the TV. So they're watching me on TV. They thought I was there in that box on the wall. And my wife told me, she goes, why don't you, when you get interviewed, say hi to my family at home. And that's how it started. And the way it ended was, well, not that it's ever ended, but in my last races, especially the last few years, there were so many people that came up to me genuinely telling me how much they really appreciated that and respected that and thought that was something that's really cool. And it started out just something really individual and intimate with my family, and turned into this other thing that ended up being so much fun and so rewarding, and being able to touch that many people with it, I thought was something truly wonderful.
And that's how you always like to leave things with your fans and your family, especially, is those kind of warm moments that, take you out of the car. And even though you're a champion on the grid with all the fans, no matter whether you're still behind the wheel or you've retired, it's that Scott Pruett moments that certainly everyone loves and loves to continue to be a part of. So thanks for stopping by and talking all kinds of racing and watches and everything else, Scott.
You got anytime. I got lots of stories, so happy to share.
Perfect. We appreciate it. Scott Pruett, the GOAT in IMSA Weather Tech Racing. And we love his watch collection. We're jealous. Thanks, Scott. Closing out another edition of the IMSA Endurance Hour, like we do every time, checking in with one of our family members in the media center covering IMSA Weather Tech Racing, and that's Graham Goodwin from dailysportscar.com. Graham, I must say, first, where are you?
I'm at home, a place called Epsom, just south of London. I'm on the Downs, looking down at London below us. So just about half an hour out of our nation's capital, and it is dark and cold here this evening, Matt.
Well, I will say this. It certainly was anything but dark and cold on race day at Daytona. 2 million plus views on the IMSA YouTube channel watching all of the door-to-door, carbon fiber to carbon fiber racing.
Fabulous race and a magnificent audience. I've heard 2.9 million people logging on to the free broadcast outside North America on YouTube. And what a fantastic endorsement of that strategy that is. This is what's achievable, I think, with the great sport of endurance racing.
Graham, this is why I want to put you on the spot. How would you describe and grade the Rolex 24 in 2025?
How would I grade it? Try to work out, I think it was my 15th attendance at the race. I go back to about 2001. By far, in terms of the racing spectacle, the best we've seen in that time. Racing phenomenal in all four classes. Great battles throughout, with some solid green running added into that. But some great storylines coming out from, in particular, from GTP and the GT classes. A little bit of spice and controversy in Needle that we'll be seeing, I'm sure, a little bit into the latter part of the IMSA season. But for me, an absolutely world-class event, an absolutely world-class race, and they're not necessarily the same things. And it's an event that I think everybody that was involved can be absolutely proud of.
Well, when you looked at the weather for the Rolex, yes, it was a little bit chilly at times, but probably similar to when you got home, 75 and sunny in England? Is that your normal weather?
It's way cold here at the moment. Let's put it this way, reasonably famously, one of the members of our family is a Siberian Husky. He's a very happy boy at the moment, experienced his first snow where we are up on the Downs to the south of London. So much colder here than it was for race day. But, as you'll know yourself, Matt, the week leading into the 24 hours was as cold as I've ever known it in Florida at that time of year. So not a lot of time for the teams to adapt to what we got in terms of racing conditions. And the quality of the racing, with that bearing in mind, all the more impressive for that.
When you looked at the grid walk, I mean, it was a sea of humanity. The grid walk was just unbelievable. The amount of people that were waiting in line for the grid walk to open, the most I've ever seen. And it just pretty much goes back to 2024, where seemingly every race we were setting a crowd record. And it seems like that trend is carrying over to 2025. And I especially love when you see even more the age average going down, because you're seeing so many more kids at the IMSA races.
I agree completely. As a dad and as a grandfather, by the way, it's great to see families, and particularly young families, engaging with it. The IMSA teams get it, probably no more so than famously the AO Racing team with Rexy and with Spike, and massive queues for autographs and stickers and their merchandise, all of that good stuff. But it's a paddock that welcomes that interaction. I'm stopped fairly often by people that sort of recognise, hopefully not the face, but quite often the voice around the paddock. And see the same with the teams as well, with some well-known faces, some less well-known faces, allowing people just a bit of a look behind the curtain. That's always been a big part of what has made endurance racing in general, but IMSA in particular, very special. And the crowds, the families are beginning again to see that this is something more of a kind of fulfilling destination for the money they're spending, the time they're investing, to go there and have a good time, not just sitting in a grandstand watching the action on track, but the paddock and vendor row and, all the merchandise stands. It's a happy place to be. We love coming racing there. Traditionally, drivers from the UK and from Europe, when they discover North American racing and IMSA racing in particular, absolutely love it. And long may that continue.
So what was the big headline on dailysportscar.com following the checkered flag?
Obviously, Porsche's double win, but you can't get away from the fact that we had a truly historic moment, and that was Nick Tandy. Nick Tandy becomes the first driver in history to win the big four 24-hour races. There is a little bit of debate, and I've noticed a slightly off-color Facebook comment from, of all people, Christophe Bouchou, who's won 3 of the 4. But Nick with a win at the Nürburgring, a win at Spa with a broken drive shaft, lest we forget, a win at Le Mans in 2015, and now a win at the Daytona 24 Hours, becomes the first driver ever to take overall wins in all 4 24-hour races. But I had another one in, and that was Ford's win in GTD Pro. That car, the Mustang GT3 in its first year, no end of traumas there. What a fantastic turnaround. Lapped and out of it in 2024. 2025 to come back with a win, but a hotly contested win, and with a storyline behind that I'm sure we're going to talk about, with shenanigans between BMW and Corvette. GTD Pro, with a record entry, Matt, delivered storylines and drama as well. Fantastic stuff.
And you touched on it. You started to go there. Yes. To me, the biggest viral story after the race was the BMW versus Corvette dust-up. And Tommy Milner, yes, he's from the States, but he gave the international sign for number one. And I love the fact that he's spinning it forward. Yep. And he's spinning it forward with a great charity that he's involved with. Going to try to raise money. T-shirts that they're printing up with that iconic picture, just sticking the hand out the window. Like Dale Earnhardt, you name it. So many American international drivers who have said, hey, I think you're number one.
I think that's exactly right. I was spending some time through the race with Ollie Gavin between his stints on the NBC broadcast, and he popped into the press room for a cup of press room coffee, which is brave of him. And what he said there was that moment right there, just that moment, Tommy Milner, if he wasn't already, but he already is, he's a GM icon from this point forward, because that is the spirit, the needle, that's going to carry through into the rest of the season. It's a definite fan favourite moment. But lest we forget, by the way, we're mentioning Corvette, they got a result, not in GTD Pro, but in GTD, with an absolutely brilliant result for the customer car from AWA. And that, Matt, is another hugely important part of this era. The first ever Corvette factory and customer program with the 06 GT3R. and Ori Fadani, Matt Bellenco, came home with the win in GTD. So the big two, if you like, the Blue Oval and Chevrolet, both taking a win apiece, but they're going to want to change that around, aren't they? They're going to want the Mustang and GTD next time around, and Corvette, the Pratt Miller guys, are going to be really keen to get a GTD Pro win at Sebring just to even up the score on the tally sheet. It really was pretty much a dream series of results for fans and factories across the board.
Corvette versus Ford, the Mustang, Chevy and Ford, that just such a great battle through all the different generations. I love the fact that car that you're talking about from AWA, that Corvette, they switched to black this year with a lot of yellowish gold striping, kind of reminiscent of the old JPS cars in Formula One in the 70s. So a great look designed by a guy named Jason Daskin up in Canada, the team up outside of Toronto. So it was neat to see those boys and girls take home a win, an emotional win in GTD. So Graham, I can't thank you enough for stopping by. Remember, check out Graham's website, dailysportscar.com, for all the latest news. And I hope to see you at Sebring, if not certainly another IMSA Weather Tech race down the road.
You'll be seeing us there and way beyond that, Matt. Keep up the good work. Great start to the IMSA Endurance Hour history, and I'm sure this is going to run and run.
Thanks, pal. Appreciate it. And by the way, the next time, I want to get a run through of your vinyl collection in the back corner. I'm sure you've got some pretty cool tunes back there.
That's the back corner that way or that way? Looking, they're books. That's books. That's books, and that's probably about 2/3 of those I've not yet had the chance to read. That's my retirement project, is read the books.
Gotcha. Well, next time you're going to have to tell us some of your iconic books that you've got there on the bookshelf in the back, because it looks like you've got some pretty cool stories back there. So, Graham, appreciate you stopping by, and look forward to next time.
Cheers, Matt.
Well, that's a wrap for episode number 2. We have so much more in store for you as the season goes on. Can't thank Tim Cindric, Scott Pruett, and Graham Goodwin enough for stopping by and talking sports cars here on the IMSA Endurance Hour. Now, you can catch Graham's podcast along with Marshall Pruett on This Week in Sports Cars. And for more of our friends in the paddock, check out Double Stint Podcast with John DeGeese and Jonathan Grace, and Hindy's Midweek Motorsports Podcast as well. Don't forget to go to your favorite podcast destination to lock us in, or to YouTube and subscribe to the IMSA channel so you don't miss any IMSA coverage over the next 12 months. So drop us a comment, tell us what you like, or if you see me at the racetrack, flag me down and say hello. And let me know what you'd love to see more of here on the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast. Thanks for watching. See you soon.